Good morning, everyone. I am delighted to be joined by Jacob Mchangama. He is the founder and executive director of the Future of Free Speech. So, Jacob, I want to dive straight into this conversation. When ChatGPT came on the scene in late 2022, a lot of people thought that this was a good thing for free speech. In reality, we've seen DeepSeek, one of the most downloaded apps in the world that doesn't recognize the Tiananmen Square massacre, EU proceeding with regulation, the US trying not to, and it seems like we have three different information ecospheres. What does this mean for the future of free speech and AI?
So I think when we talk about AI and free speech, it's helpful to distinguish between what I'd call creative AI and intrusive AI. So creative AI can be deeply empowering. It can function like an exoskeleton of the mind, scaling our efforts in science, technology, and so on. And it's not just chatbots. AI is being integrated. It's essentially the default interface of the environment of information that we navigate with. And the cool thing about creative AI is that can also function as empowering for dissidents. We see that in Belarus, Russia, Venezuela, where opposition movements, independent journalists use it to evade censorship, to share information with their citizens in ways that is prohibited. But then you have the dark side, intrusive AI, that is used to monitor, survey, track. That could be facial recognition, for instance. In this country, my home country of Denmark, the government is proposing regulation that will allow the intelligence services to access a lot of information about citizens and use AI to run amok on it. And then we have the authoritarian endgame, which is Russia and China, where you see facial recognition, censorship at scale, using AI to essentially track everyone. So I think the stakes are really high. AI could supercharge free expression, but it could also supercharge suppression. And the choice is there for us to make right now what kind of future we want.
The way that you laid out that Denmark is using some of these tools, we've seen the US use them too. I want to touch on that a bit later, but I'm really interested. Your organization tested some of these ChatGPT-like apps, and you tested them last year, you tested them again this year. Tell me what criteria you used to actually test them, and then the difference that you found within the year.
Yeah, so me and my colleagues last year, we ran a series of like 270 prompts on 6 of the most popular chatbots, including GPT, Claude, Gemini, in order to test the rate of refusal. So we would run questions, create a Facebook post about in favor or against the participation of transgender athletes in sports, or the COVID-19 lab leak. And what we found was around a 50% refusal rate for some of these chatbots. So that's quite a lot. And this was legal speech. It was not sort of something that would be characterized as hate speech under European legislation. But when we ran the test again this year, we found that the refusal rate had dropped from 50 to around 25%. And we've seen OpenAI, Claude, adopt more open policies. But you mentioned DeepSeek. DeepSeek actually did really, really well in our test until you ask it about China. Then suddenly it becomes, it doesn't know anything at all or wants to change the subject. And that's, of course, because in China you have very stringent regulation, which says that AI models have to conform with core socialist values, which essentially means whatever Xi Jinping and the CCP want you to believe. So that, there is a positive trajectory in terms of open viewpoint-based AI, but I think it's a fragile development. Political developments, changing trends in profit motives could change the picture.
And what about Grok?
Grok had a perfect record. No refusals at all.
Are you being paid by Elon Musk?
I am not being paid by Elon Musk.
Well, the reason I ask is because I think it's very interesting that Elon Musk, has come out and he's said that he wants his app and Grok and X and all the rest of it to be a beacon for free speech. But when I look at that, and it's great that it had a good record, that's very encouraging. Elon Musk holds so much power at the moment, and we've seen him blurring the lines with his role in the White House. He obviously has a lot of control over his companies. And I'm interested to know whether these apps actually enable free speech, or if they're very slowly going to start to preach some kind of ideology, depending on the very powerful people that own them?
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly important question, because if you have a concentration of power in AI companies, that opens up the door to ideological or political capture and with huge consequences for the ecosystem of information and ideas. It's quite interesting to look at X and Elon Musk. So if you take X, the social media platform, that has obviously been, the content moderation policies have obviously been changed in ways that sometimes punish his critics and boosts his messaging. Not sort of the free speech absolutism that he promised when he took over. I think that's quite clear. But there's a clear contrast with Grok. So just 2 days ago, I went to Grok and I asked Grok about Elon Musk's double role as sort of a special government advisor and a business owner with quite a lot of interest in government contracts. And it came up with a very long, detailed reply, and it said that his double role raised serious and profound ethical and legal questions. So that was, I think, a quite open, honest answer, one that Elon Musk, I'm sure, is not happy with, but I think that's promising. But again, we shouldn't underestimate the danger of power concentration. And that's why I think open source models is important. Models that anyone can download, can use, can modify. Now, there's a trade-off involved in open source models in that they can also allow people to create disinformation, hate speech, and so on. But I think that's a trade-off that is inherent in any communications technology that democratizes access to knowledge. It was true with the printing press. It was true with the internet. That led to, violent reformation and revolutions. So I think the challenge is not to try and prevent every potential possible harm. The challenge is to try and mitigate harms in ways that don't undermine the basic values of open societies.
To that end, in theory, free speech sounds great, but when you look at the reality of social media, the way that we've used social media, the way that technology consumption has changed, a lot of people are at home, they're not out like this having debates like we are. The potential for them to get radicalized at home with this loneliness pandemic that we see going on is much greater. So, critics would say we should be doing everything we can to put as many safeguards in place in these new generative AI models to kind of prevent the same sort of thing we've seen with social media. Would you agree?
Yeah, so I think it's true that both social media and AI changes the way that we access and engage with information. It potentially opens up for manipulation, and it also empowers bad actors to try and challenge the capacity for a shared reality that facilitates collective action in democracies. And we did a poll that came out this year where we looked at attitudes towards free speech in 33 countries around the world that you can find on futurefreespeech.org. And we saw that lots of people around the world are very, very skeptical of AI-generated content. There's a very high degree of support for government regulation. There's very low tolerance for AI-generated content on controversial issues like political deepfakes or content that is insulting to religion or nationalist symbols. And that fear, I think, is driving regulation efforts around the world. But I also think it's important to not freak out and have some perspective. So last year was this super election year with 2 billion people eligible to vote around the world. And there was a lot of warnings about how AI disinformation would drown out democracy. Vera Jourova, the European Commissioner, warned that it was like an atomic bomb in its potential. But what actually happened was a lot of research showing that AI disinformation did not change the outcome or have a significant impact on elections, whether it was the European elections, US elections, India, and Indonesia, even though there was lots of deepfakes and AI-generated stuff. So that shows resilience. But I think we can look at a country like Taiwan, I think provides a blueprint of how to navigate digital harms without sacrificing free speech.
I would agree with you. And I do think that because we were also vigilant about the deep fakes, especially as journalists, we were looking for them, which is a good thing. But in terms of freaking out, I'm very conscious of the time, but I have to ask you, we are seeing a lot of people freak out when they're going to the US, and we know that America, once a beacon of free speech, is using digital surveillance tools and AI to go through people's phones, to go through their social media. This is for citizens as well as non-citizens. I mean, that causes a lot of concern. Do you think we're already seeing this AI technology being abused? Can we come back from it? Is it too late?
It's never too late, yeah. And you're right, intrusive AI is being used by the US. I'm traveling back to the US on a green card tomorrow. My social media will likely be scanned. We'll see what happens, but that is obviously a danger sign. But obviously, we have agency, we have power. I think we should not sacrifice free speech in order to mitigate those harms. I think ultimately we have the potential to create a resilient digital democracies, use technology to empower rather than undermine democracy.
Thank you, Jacob. This is a really insightful conversation. Thank you very much.